Next, let's talk about the inverter. This one's going to be a really simple one. We've already touched on it a little bit, and there's not much more to get into. What an inverter does is it converts the DC energy that the solar system produces from the solar panels into usable AC energy that homeowners can be able to utilize inside of their homes. So DC stands for direct current, AC stands for alternating current. Pretty simple, right? There's one more thing that the inverter does. Now, if a solar system does not have a battery, it will have an automatic shutoff switch within the inverter to make sure that the electricity does not keep flowing out to the utility company. Reason being is because if somebody's trying to repair those electrical lines, they're going to get zapped if you try to have the energy flow from the solar system back to the utility company. So the solar system can still produce energy during power outages, but the inverter will prevent that from happening and prevent it from going back to the utility company in order to protect people that are working on the utility lines. So if your solar system does not have a battery or an end-phase inverter, which we'll also dive into, then they will not have power during a power outage. That's important to let the customer know that so there's no false expectations set. Let's talk about the different systems that are used for the panels. So these different systems, we're going to talk about the string system, a microinverter, and an optimizer. And with the string system, it communicates to the inverter, to a singular inverter like we talked about before, and the inverter will convert the DC to AC energy just like we talked about. But with the string system, there's a negative side to it. What ends up happening is if one of the panels are shaded at, let's say, 50%, that means anything that's connected onto that string is going to be functioning at 50% capacity. So it's not the most popular method used today. We have many more options. The next option that we'll talk about is a microinverter. Essentially, what the microinverter does is that inverter that we talked about, it's now on a micro scale, it's on each panel. So the microinverter converts the DC to AC energy. There's one on each individual panel and allows each panel to function independently from one another. So if a panel is shaded at 50%, it impacts 0% of the rest of the panels. Now, there is another form called an optimizer. Think of it as a combination of the string system and the microinverter connected together. So it's essentially a string system, but each panel has an optimizer connected to it, and it still flows into a singular inverter, just like before. Now, with a optimizer system, just like a microinverter, each panel functions independently from one another. If one panel is shaded at 50%, it does not impact the rest of the panels whatsoever. And it's a little bit cheaper than a microinverter system. So that is why the optimizers have become much more popularized over time. But whether it is an optimizer or a microinverter, both of them do the same thing essentially.